Good morning. Talking today about cliches again. I mentioned this in a previous video and a few of you picked up on it, that this idea that cliches are cliches because there is normally always a big element of truth to them. And there was another comment I picked up on where a guy was explaining how his life was pretty simple and how he was actually really content and happy with that. And so the cliche that I wanted to focus on today was less is more. And I'm sure you've heard this before, and I'm sure it goes straight over your head, and I'm sure you maybe even agree with it in principle. But when it actually comes to practicing that in real life, it is a lot more difficult. And I've been thinking lately on how this concept has applied to my own life. And I guess let's start with the kind of narrative that we learn in society, that having more is more, and how you can never have enough money, you can never have enough accolades, you can never have enough love or health. There is a truth to some of that, but what I've found, at least in my own life, is that the more complicated a system becomes and the more moving parts are in that system, the more chance for failure and for things to go wrong. And I think about all the concepts in which I have tried very hard to get more of certain things. One thing that crops up for me is fitness. So I've been making an effort to get back down the gym and running lately, but I have been very conscious of how much time I dedicate to exercising, how much time I dedicate to recovering, and how well I eat. Because when it comes to exercise, there is this really delicate balance between stimulation, as in lifting weights, running, whatever it is, resting, so sleeping normally, and also making sure that your body has all the nutrients it needs to recover from that workout. And this is something I didn't really understand. So in my mind, going back, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 years ago now, I got really obsessed with going to the gym. I was going 6 days a week. I was working out for, it was like hour and a half every single day, lifting heavy. And I was tracking my calories back then and eating 1,800 calories. And after a few months of doing this, I started to feel really, really ill. And I was having trouble sleeping, my moods were all over the place, depression, my anxiety was through the roof, and I went to the doctors to get my bloods tested, and it turns out my testosterone had absolutely tanked. And there's a whole story about that. I ended up getting put on testosterone replacement therapy for a short while, didn't feel comfortable taking it, so I came off. But what was really happening to my body in that instance is that I was pushing it so hard in order to try and get more fitness, more muscles, more health, without balancing out the rest and the diet side of it. And so if I'd applied that more is more concept, I actually made myself incredibly ill. So there's like a really good example of less is more. You know, there's a certain ideal amount of something that we can have that will give us the joy or happiness or security. But after that point, there's diminishing returns. Another good example of this is money. And I've heard this said before, that something like once you get beyond 70,000, I think it's dollars as well. So if you're in the UK, that's probably, I don't know, 55, 60K. Once you get to that point, so from 0 up to 60K, in terms of your earnings, you will get steadily more happy as your earnings increase. But once you get beyond the 60K mark, getting any more money over and above that isn't going to make you as happier as the last 10K did. So 50K to 60K is going to make you 10K happier, but 60K to 70K is not going to. And back when I was working in sales, I went over and above that figure. And I'm not saying this to boast in any way, shape or form, but I had gone from working on a building site, making, I think it was something like, it varied because it was agency work, but £300 or £400 a week, maybe 500 quid, having to live at home. And I changed into sales and my income substantially increased. very quickly. And that was great because it allowed me to get out of debt. I was able to move out of my dad's house into my own flat. All of those things were great. But what I found is that once my debts were paid and I had hit that threshold of 60k, I was pushing myself harder to earn more money, but it wasn't necessarily making me any happier. So getting out of debt made me really happy. You know, I had a sense of freedom there. Moving out of my dad's place into my own flat, massive amounts of freedom. All of those things were fantastic. Having money saved away as well, knowing that if there was any kind of emergencies, that there was money there to catch me. But as soon as I went over that 60k, I found that every month my lifestyle hadn't dramatically changed, and yet my stress levels had, because I was pushing harder and harder. In truth, I wanted to hit six figures, and only because I wanted to be able to say that I was making six figures. And, you know, looking back on it, it just seems so fucking shallow. Like, nobody cares. And for those that do, you're going to alienate people, really, talking about your making six figures, because the vast majority of people don't. And then they're just going to feel, firstly, like you're boasting, and maybe you're a bit of a prick. But even if you're not boasting about it, they're going to feel intimidated, or like they can't relate to you. And again, another example of like, more is not more. And I go back to talking about like simple systems, because I genuinely believe that the more simple you can make your life, and the more high quality the components that build your life, the higher the quality of life you're going to experience. And let me kind of explain that as an analogy. When I used to work in sales, I sold a particular product, and it was a mechanical product. It was incredibly well made, but also quite simple. And because it was well made with high quality parts in a very controlled environment, the end product was far more expensive than the competitors. And some of the competitors copied this product, but with far less superior products or materials. And so really my biggest job when I was going into people's houses and trying to sell this product was not to convince them that our product was the best. People already knew that. But why they should spend twice as much with us when they could buy the same thing from somebody else. And what the competitors had started doing was introducing more complex systems. They would try to get all clever and adding technology to these things. And the end result of what the user actually wanted didn't require a huge amount of complexity, but it did require something that was just going to continue working again and again and again. And time and time again, I would lose business to a customer who had decided to buy a cheaper product from Amazon or eBay or something like that, and a year later had called me up because it had failed miserably and had caused all sorts of other issues. And I look back on this and think that the complexity of that system is what caused the problems in the first place. And if they had just gone with the product that I was offering, which was far more simple, that they would have saved far more money because they're spending less. And before I go off on a complete tangent here, the point being is that the simpler and higher quality a system is, the better the experience you're going to get out of it. And I think that analogy applies directly to our own lives as well. If we can really determine what it is that we really want from life, and we make that the highest quality and the highest priority, and we fill our lives with those things, and we can really be honest with ourselves about the things that we don't actually care that much about, that maybe we are holding on to or trying to achieve to impress other people or to fit into some kind of societal standard. If we can let go of those things and just build a life that's fairly simple, that has everything that we want and need in it, we are going to achieve far more happiness, joy and contentment than the person that is always trying to get more. So yeah, I hope this I hope this video made some sense today. I don't actually have much time to film today, so this was a bit of a rushed concept, but the community is really building on this channel, and I try and read each and every single one of your comments, and if I have time I will reply to as many of them as I can. And I find it so interesting how I can give my spin on things, and then I hear other people's perspectives, and hearing how other people have benefited from hearing the way that I see the world. And it was a couple of comments in particular that spurred on this video of less is more, of simplifying your life so that there's less moving parts in it. The more moving parts, the more things that there is to go wrong, the more likelihood that there is going to be something that goes wrong. Cars is another perfect example. You know, I remember when I first started driving, cars were pretty simple things, and I could change the spark plugs, I could change the oil, the filters, I could do a full service myself. Everything was easy and accessible as soon as you lifted the hood. And then I remember I got my first ever BMW, and I lifted the bonnet on that, and I just knew that there was no way I was going to be touching anything in there. So many complex systems that all rely on one another in order to squeeze the maximum of efficiency out of the car, to get the maximum amount of MPG and the maximum amount of brake horsepower. And this was a really complex system. It was great when it worked, but when it went wrong, it went fantastically wrong, and it was incredibly expensive to fix. And by comparison, my older cars, the ones that I could service myself, they rarely went wrong, and if they did, it was an easy thing for me to fix and a cheap thing for me to fix. And I think that is just such a great analogy for life. I mean, maybe I should have started on the car analogy than what I used to sell. It's far more relatable to most people, I think. But yeah, I think so often we think that we need to add more to our lives, and in truth, most of the time we need to take things away. When we're striving to be the richest, the guy with the most amount of friends, the guy with the most amount of money, the six-pack abs, all of those things, when you're striving so hard for all of those things, you only have a finite amount of space and time in your life for things. And so the more things you throw into it, the less dedication you can give to each of them. And so what ends up happening is you give less time to the things that actually really create joy and happiness for you. That might be spending time with your friends and family. That might be gardening. That might be riding your motorbike. It might be hiking. Whatever it is, if you fill your life with things that half of which aren't meaningful, then that's 50% of your time that you're going to have to spend doing things that you don't enjoy versus spending that time doing something that you could. So I'd love to know in the comments what it is your life a complicated one or a simple one? And if it is complicated, after watching this video, is there anything that you might consider cutting out? Is there any way that you could maybe simplify your own life? And I'd be really interested to hear people's answers in the comments. So let me know. We are starting to build such a fantastic community on this channel. I'm hoping that I can post as often as I have been, but I have got some temporary work just before Christmas, which is going to be taking up a lot of my time. So I'm going to try and get as many videos out as I can. Keep on commenting. It's just such a beautiful thing to see the experience that people are having from watching these videos. If you are interested in hearing more from me, there is a link to the newsletter in the description, and I am also offering a limited number of spaces to work with me one-to-one on a coaching basis. I'm going to go more into coaching and what that process is later on, probably in the New Year's, because I have benefited hugely from coaching and it's something that I want to pursue. But maybe you just want to talk to someone about where you're at in life, where you could be going, and help having a bouncing board to just run things through and to see where you might be going wrong and where you could make some improvements. But I'll talk about that more, I think, in the new year. So thanks for watching again. I really appreciate you taking the time. I mentioned in yesterday's video that time is such a precious resource, and I am really grateful that you have chose to spend your time watching these videos. So I really hope that I'm able to provide the value that you deserve, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much.